To make it easier to work with CSS, Visual Studio provides the Css Properties window. By using it in Design View, you can very easily create and modify CSS styles. First, open the HTML test sample file from your Sample Files folder. And open csstest.aspx in Design View. You're now going to display the Css Properties window. To do this, click View, CSS Properties. Now you'll use the CSS Properties window to modify the Big Text class. First, select Div 1 by using the drop-down menu in the Properties window. You'll see that the big text style you created in Lesson 2.8 is shown in the Applied Rules box at the top of the CSS Properties window. It also shows that big text comes from the file csstest.css. Towards the top of the CSS Properties list, you can see the Font Size property, which is part of the Big Text CSS class. Beneath Font Size, you'll see a complete list of the CSS properties that are available. You can use the CSS Properties window to set them just like you set properties in the Properties window. Some other common CSS properties are Font Family, which is used to select the font used by text, Display, which is used to change how the element is displayed and is most often used to hide elements, Position, which is used to change how the element is positioned on the page, Top and Left, which are used to set an element's position depending on how the position property is set, Text Align, which is used to set the horizontal alignment of text, Vertical Align, which is used to set the vertical alignment of text, Padding, which adds space to the inside of an element, and Margin, which adds space to the outside of an element. At this time, CSS has had 3 versions, but Visual Studio's list of CSS properties is only complete up to CSS version 2. CSS version 2 is almost universally supported by modern web browsers, while support for CSS 3 is very inconsistent. You can still use CSS 3 properties in Visual Studio, but you will have to type them into your CSS files manually, and Visual Studio may mark them with warnings, as it does not recognize them as valid CSS. CSS 3 properties will probably be added to Visual Studio when web browser support for them improves. Using the drop-down menu in the CSS Properties window, change the font size property from XX-large to XX-small. As you can see, the text size has changed in Design View. If you now open csstest.css, you'll see that the Big Text class has been changed. You're now going to use the CSS Properties window to create an entirely new CSS class. Switch back to csstest.aspx, select Div 1 using the drop-down menu in the Properties window if it isn't selected already, and either clear the class property in the Properties window or right-click on Big Text in the CSS Properties window and click Remove Class. This has removed the reference to Big Text from Div 1. You can see that the text has returned to its normal size, except for the first line, which has inline CSS. Next, right-click in the Applied Rules box in the CSS Properties window and click New Style. The New Style dialog appears. Enter .red text into the Selector box. This is the name of your new CSS class, which will work in exactly the same way as the Big Text class, which you created in Lesson 2.8. Now click the Define In drop-down and choose Existing Style Sheet. This tells the dialog that you want to create your style in an existing CSS file instead of creating a new one. Next, open the URL dialog and choose styles/csstest.css. Lastly, open the Color dialog, click Red, and click OK. The contents of div 1 are now shown in red. If you reopen csstest.css, you can see the new CSS class that has been created. You've now completed Lesson 2.9. Use the CSS Properties window.